let's go ahead and get into the news. We'll get that fired off here. Thanks, guys, for watching, and we'll take care of some news now. Hey everybody, and welcome to the channel. Today, this is Clyde. What is this? How do I do this? It's been so long. It's been so long. Hello everyone, and welcome to Clyde Plays News. My name is Clyde. Today we're going to talk about the news in World of Warships. We've got a few articles that are going on right now. And for some reason, the interact button is not there. There we go. First up is our top story. Pan-American cruisers have not suffered. They've endured. They've been party to. They have experienced a great big change to their overall makeup. But first, let's talk a little bit about some changes to ships that are presently in test. So right now we've got a number of ships in test. Some of these ships have been very highly discussed and very, very eagerly awaited by the community. First, we've got the light cruiser Brisbane, which is sort of Minotaur-esque based on its description that we've seen so far in the dev blog. Brisbane has HE, whereas Minotaur does not. It is a light cruiser with a similar armor profile to Minotaur, but no smoke. One of the things that it does have is 12.5 kilometer torpedoes, which they've extended to 13.5 kilometers. So that's a buff to cruiser Brisbane. Z42 got hit with the Nerf bat here just a little bit ago. And one of the things that they changed was its torpedo range. It went from 10 kilometers, I believe, down to 7.5. And now with this recent blog article, they're pushing that back up to 10 kilometers. So in testing, we must have discovered that Z42 just didn't have the torpedo power that we expected it to. Nebraska is having the main battery firing range reduced with the researchable fire control module from 22.7 kilometers all the way down to 21. That's a reduction of 1.7 kilometers, which is no small adjustment. And Louisiana is having its plane maneuverability during the preparation to attack increased by 33%. That's a buff to airplane maneuverability. That's the ability to turn when you're coming in on the attack, and that's going to allow those planes to be a little less precise with their initial approach angles. The bomb's dispersion is also being reduced by 50%. That's another buff to Louisiana. Alliance, now you may remember Alliance is the Tier 8 British premium submarine that is in development, is having a buff to its maximum torpedo damage. The homing torpedoes are going from 5,067 to 5,700 damage, and the chance of flooding is being reduced quite drastically from 77% to 29%. Now, flooding percentages are really, really tricky. This doesn't mean that 77% of the time your ship is going to be flooded by one of these, because some of the ships that have strong torpedoes have a flooding chance of like 350%, which is then reduced by various factors, including torpedo protection and all of that stuff. So these are actually very low flooding percentage numbers. The alternative torpedoes have had their damage increased as well from 9,800 to about 11,000, to exactly 11,000. And the chance of flooding there has also been reduced, but this time by just 12%. Dupleix is a Tier 6 French cruiser. This one has had some Nerfs applied to it. 16.9 kilometer firing range has come all the way down to 15.5, and at Tier 6, that is a really brutal Nerf when you know that this ship is going to be facing Tier 8 ships. So that's something we're going to be watching and hoping, at least I'm personally hoping, to see that adjustment made again back the other way, although I don't know if I'll get my wish here for Dupleix, just because I feel like 15.5 for that kind of cruiser, that French-style kiting cruiser, could be kind of difficult, assuming the ship plays like it reads. The other detectability of ships is being increased from 12.1 to 13.8. These are not small Nerfs to Dupleix. This is actually a pretty nasty Nerf, 1.7 kilometers on detection. And then the detectability range after firing guns of smoke has also been increased. Just that comes naturally with increasing the detectability range. Our next story is actually this one here, talking about some balance changes to ships that have been in the game. We've seen this kind of change come from Wargaming periodically. And again, every time these come up, I always talk about how I believe these are healthy for the game. We do like to see these periodic balance changes, even though sometimes they change ships that we don't want them to change in ways that we don't want them to change them. Today, Marlborough, or Marby, as I like to call her because it's easier, is having a buff. The restoration of hit points received to damage excuse me, after receiving damage to parts of the hulls are increased from 50 to 60%. So that's going to make Marby a little bit more survivable. That's a buff. Renown is having its main battery reload time reduced 1 second. Not a huge number, but we are going to see that change Renown for the better. That is the Tech Tree version of the Renown at Tier 6. The Tech Tree Tier 9 US Heavy Cruiser Buffalo is having a 0.5 second main battery reload buff. So that's a positive for the Buffalo, which I believe that it needs. I like the idea of Buffalo getting a little bit faster, although honestly, I think a half a second is not a big enough difference to make it feel more like you're on your way to Des Moines. Because boy, Des Moines got like a 6 second reload, 5.5 second reload, something silly like that. Buffalo here sitting at 11 after the buff. Dalian is having a main battery reload time buff as well. It's going from 5.5 seconds to 5.2. So just a 0.3 second buff for the Soviet-style Pan-American light cruiser. Sejong is having a similar treatment, 5.5 down to 5.2 seconds, also a buff for Sejong. Now this next section is listed under bug fixes, which means this wasn't a change to the ship that was intended, but it is a change that is trying to put these ships back to their expected performance. All of these Japanese cruisers are having the number of depth charge airstrike flights increase from 1 to 2. So apparently these ships have had a single flight and then they've had to do the reload, whereas normally you can launch a flight and then launch the next flight fairly quickly after. And they've only had one flight. So it's nice to see that corrected, especially as it was a bug, it turns out. So Omono, Tokachi, Miyoko, Ashigara, Eastern Dragon, Southern Dragon, Nachi, and Haguro, all of these, except for Omono and Tokachi, are Miyoko clones. So it's not a surprise that all these ships would probably share code and thus have the same bug. But it's kind of a bummer that these two also experience that. Maya is also having a, this is listed under this bug fix section as well, which is kind of interesting. It says the depth charge airstrike maximum range is going from 5 kilometers to 7 kilometers. I like to see this kind of change. We do need more range on more ships against submarines who can ping from beyond the airstrike range. You know, why should I have to get closer to the thing that is threatening me? It feels like those things should be equal for all ships. Ohio. Julius, sorry.
Massachusetts.
Ragnar here is also having an adjustment. Again, it looks like this is also under that bug fix section. So if that's the case, just a very small change, 4 points of AA reduction with continuous damage there. These are all going to be in the 12.0 public test version, so we won't see these on the live server for a little while, but do be watching because they are coming. And again, I think largely these are decent changes. You know, Marlborough, Renown, Buffalo, Dalian, Sejong, all these are good changes. Love it when we fix bugs. The Ragnar change seems like almost it doesn't matter, but here we go, and here we are. Now let's get back to our top story for the evening. This one here, we are seeing some big changes to the Pan-American cruiser line. Now, if you've been following this cruiser line, we know that it's kind of been interesting, right? It started off as light cruisers with HE and AP modeled kind of after the American light cruisers like the Worcester line, but they've also got torpedoes, and they had this combat instructions thing that was going to make their HE shells pen more if you fired full salvos. So you had to double click, not single fire, and they hit a certain number of shells. It was really complicated, honestly. I don't think it was that complicated, but it was more complicated than most of these ships. And now they've done some testing and they've received some feedback. So based on data, basically, and feedback, they are changing the concept of the Pan-American cruisers. So let's talk about what's going on. It says the goal of developing this branch was to create gameplay where the combat instructions would play an important role. Based on the results of testing, it turned out the initial concept did not meet this expectation. The following changes are being made to this branch, and these are not insignificant changes. I'm really curious what you guys think of these. HE shells are removed. We won't have HE on the Pan-American cruisers anymore. Ships will be armed with AP only, with improved ricochet angles. There was a discussion, and these will not have improved, we've been told at least, that these will not have improved fuse times, but they will have improved ricochet angles. So I'm really interested to see about those ricochet angles and how that's going to affect this line. How improved are they, right? Combat instructions are changed. The progress bar is filled with any main battery hits. Because honestly, that you have to double click thing was always kind of lame. Bonus of combat instructions is now this, a significant reduction of consumables reload time. Okay, pin that, remember that. Starting from tier 6, the reload time of all consumables except for spotter aircraft is 180 seconds. That's a very long time. While the spotter is 240 seconds. 180 seconds for your damage control party? Because that's considered a consumable, remember. The default number of all consumables is 4. The ships also have a regular damage control party with unlimited charges. Now, that sentence there makes me think it might not be 180 seconds. We'll have to wait and see when these come to public test, or if we get a little bit more information about the ships. Now the defensive fire consumable is an available choice starting from tier 7, and the spotter from tier 8. Surveillance radar consumable is added to tier 8 through 10 ships. Detection of 9 kilometer range with a 25-second duration. So kind of a weaker radar, not very long duration, not very long distance. And the specialized repair teams at tier 6 and above now restore 80% of the damage taken in any part of the ship. And the repair party of tier 2 through 5 restores 50%. 80% is huge. That is, I think, the highest number in the game of the amount of damage that you can restore. Now, that's not 80% in a single use of the consumable. It's 80% of the damage that you've taken. So you should see a pretty long light gray bar of hull repair that you can repair. It does look like it'll be an improved, I think it said in here, specialized repair team. So specialized is the standard British super heal, which means it heals pretty fast and it heals a big percentage. And it's going to be able to reach into 75 or 80%, excuse me, of the damage taken and pull that back up. So it's very, very powerful in terms of that, which is interesting. Now, the 180 seconds, like Scotta points out, is a very long time. That's a 3-minute cooldown essentially on the consumable. Now, if you use your main battery and get a lot of main battery hits, you can shorten that duration. That's the way the new combat instructions are going to work. And so that's going to be particularly interesting. What this seems to be implying, or it seems to be trying to convince players to do, is to play close with that short radar and with the rat-a-tat-tat machine guns you're going to have, and to dish up a lot of damage so you can get your heal back real quick, so you can heal, so you can survive on the front line, so you can dish up a lot of damage, so you can heal because you're going to take a lot of damage, so you can survive on the front line, so you can dish up a lot of damage. It should make players who can get into that rhythm, at least the design implies that we want to get into that rhythm and make the ship sustainable through aggressive actions, which could be extremely exciting or extremely frustrating, or you could never get in the right rhythm. I don't know. But it's a big shift to what these ships were going to be, which was ships that improved their HE pen to a maximum of like 50 millimeters, I think was the original design with the combat instructions. So big changes for Pan American cruisers. We'll see how this goes as we go. I'm really curious what you guys think about this. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit me up with the comment or in the comments down below. Shandar, thanks for the follow. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit me up in the comments with what you think about these cruisers. Obviously, Wargaming decided that what they were doing before just wasn't working. Takes a little courage to throw away an idea and go with a new one. So that's great. Hopefully this new one works out nicely. And if you're watching this on Twitch, we're going to go back and play some more games of World of Warships right now. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Clyde. This has been Clyde Plays News, and we hope you catch us live. If you're on YouTube, come hang out with us on Twitch, twitch.tv/Clyde Plays Live. We do World of Warships 3 times a week, and sometimes we do the news over here. And if you're watching on Twitch, of course, and you've never been to the YouTube channel, what the heck? Why don't you consider it? Check it out over there, youtube.com/Clyde Plays. All right, guys, with all that out of the way, we're wrapped up with the news. Thanks for watching. Take care of each other and be cool. Talk to you next time. Bye.
This has been the news on Clyde Plays Live.